Russia's quiet sickness, an economy on the brink. Russia is facing a deep and growing economic problem. It may not be as visible as the fighting in Ukraine, but it is just as serious. Analysts now say the country is suffering from a severe case of Dutch disease. This is not a medical illness. It is an economic sickness that can rot a country from the inside. The problem stems from the country's huge reliance on its energy sector for money. This economic disease is unfolding in multiple layers, each one making the situation worse. Understanding Dutch disease. To understand what is happening in Russia, we must first look back to the Netherlands in the second half of the 20th century. The term Dutch disease was coined to describe a paradoxical economic event that occurred there. The story begins in 1959 with the discovery of the Groningen gas field, one of the largest natural gas reserves in the world. Initially, this was seen as a national lottery win, a ticket to unprecedented prosperity. As gas exports surged, a flood of foreign currency poured into the country. This immense demand for the Dutch currency, the guilder, caused its value to rise sharply on international markets. The nation's newfound wealth seemed to be working exactly as expected. However, this energy boom had unintended and deeply negative consequences for other parts of the economy. The strong guilder made all Dutch products more expensive for foreign buyers. Suddenly, traditional export sectors like manufacturing and agriculture found themselves unable to compete on the global stage. At the same time, the booming energy industry offered higher wages, creating a powerful magnetic pull for skilled workers. This internal brain drain starved other vital sectors of the talent and investment they needed to innovate and grow, causing them to wither. This is the classic definition of Dutch disease, an over-reliance on a single natural resource that, through currency appreciation and labor reallocation, inadvertently hollows out the wider, more diversified economy. But this outcome isn't inevitable. Consider Norway, which discovered its own massive oil reserves. Anticipating the risks, they created a sovereign wealth fund, investing the oil profits abroad to prevent their currency from overheating and to save for the future. The Netherlands, however, provided the world with a cautionary tale of what happens when that foresight is absent. Symptom 1. The crippling blow to Russia's refineries. Since early 2024, Ukraine has conducted a relentless and highly effective campaign of long-range drone strikes against Russian oil refineries. These aren't random attacks. They are precision strikes targeting the heart of Russia's refining capability, the primary distillation units, or CDUs. By disabling these critical components, a single drone can halt a significant portion of a facility's output, creating a strategic bottleneck that is difficult and expensive to resolve. As of October 2025, the scale of the campaign is staggering. At least 21 of Russia's 38 major oil refineries have been hit, many of them multiple times. The attacks span a vast geographical area, from facilities near the Ukrainian border to those deep inside Russia, hundreds of kilometers from the front lines, demonstrating a sophisticated and expanding operational reach. Consequently, a significant portion of Russia's refining capacity is now offline. Estimates suggest that over 15% of the country's total gasoline and diesel production has been disrupted. Repairs are painfully slow, hampered by Western sanctions that block access to specialized foreign-made components and technical expertise. For some of the most damaged units, repair timelines are estimated to be anywhere from 6 months to well over a year, compounding the economic losses with each passing day. The downstream effects are now undeniable. Major fuel shortages are being reported across multiple regions, creating a ripple effect throughout the domestic economy. The Southern Federal District, a crucial logistical hub for military operations, has been hit particularly hard. Here, about 220 stations, roughly 14% of the total, have suspended sales entirely due to a lack of supply. In response to the supply shock and widespread reports of price gouging, the Federal Anti-Monopoly Service imposed price caps on October 14th. But price controls cannot create fuel. They are a temporary measure to manage public discontent, treating the symptoms of the crisis, not the underlying cause. The strikes are not stopping. Intelligence suggests they are increasing in frequency and sophistication. For a nation where energy revenues account for up to half of the federal budget and subsidize the entire war effort, this is more than an inconvenience. The growing queues and shuttered pumps are the most visible signs that the economic foundation of the state itself is beginning to crack under the strain. Paying others for your own product. With nearly 40% of refining capacity down, Russia is importing gasoline it once made at home. China bought discounted Russian crude, now sells back higher-priced refined fuel. It profits first on cheap crude, then again on expensive gasoline. Analysts warned Russia would supply strategic resources on unfavorable terms, and now it does. Every liter imported drains funds that could support the economy or the war effort. A raw material superpower now buys back its own product, a stark symbol of a broken model. The sight of foreign tankers delivering gasoline to Russian ports says it all. Beyond production losses and imports, Russia faces a second layer: soaring transport costs. Refineries were distributed to minimize last-mile costs. Drone strikes shattered that balance. Fuel for high-demand regions now travels thousands of kilometers. Trucks, trains, and ships burn the same precious fuel, creating a vicious cycle. Higher transport costs eat revenues and jack up prices. The system begins to seize. Reports say over half of regions face shortages. Rationing limits many to 10 to 20 liters per visit. If people and goods cannot move, the economy cannot function. Clogged roads and idle railways speak volumes. An energy sector problem cascades through every sector, isolating communities and stalling commerce. The third and deepest layer, a wartime economy warping the labor market. Energy-funded budgets are funneled into the arms industry, one of the few growth areas. State-backed factories offer higher wages, pulling labor from civilian sectors. Industrial output may rise, but it is concentrated in the military-industrial complex. Independent analyses find the civilian sector predominantly negative. War spending can spark local booms, but it is a fragile, state-funded bubble. When the war ends, contracts vanish, factories shed jobs, and local income collapses. It is a classic boom and bust, amplified by war and paid for by the future. A key reason the disease is severe, a political structure that blocks reform. Power and wealth are concentrated. Fortunes are tied to energy exports and the status quo. Surviving refiners profit from shortages while ordinary citizens queue for fuel. Innovation and diversification that could cure the disease are actively stifled. Remove energy and the economy can crumble like a house of cards. Russia lacks resilient, globally competitive brands and technology, consumer goods, and services. Those benefiting most have no incentive to change course, even as the system deteriorates. This is the lock on the cage, trapping Russia in its economic sickness. The consequences of this crisis are not abstract economic theories. They are tangible realities shaping the daily lives of millions across Russia's vast territory. For ordinary citizens, the simple act of travel has become unpredictable and fraught with difficulty. In a country defined by immense distances, fuel shortages mean canceled trips, difficulty reaching work, and reduced access to essential services like healthcare. In the agricultural heartlands, delivery trucks and vital farm equipment sit idle, jeopardizing planting and harvest seasons. This paralysis on the farm translates directly to supply gaps in the cities, leading to emptier shelves and rising prices for basic necessities, squeezing household budgets that are already under strain. In the more remote regions, this scarcity does more than just inconvenience. It isolates entire communities, fraying the delicate social fabric that holds them together. For towns built around a single industry, like a refinery or a major logistical hub, the economic shock is existential. When the primary engine of the local economy sputters, the entire community can collapse. The pattern is a familiar one, echoing the decline of the U.S. Rust Belt. A period of boom, followed by a sharp decline, and then a slow, painful depopulation as people, especially the young and skilled, migrate in search of opportunity, accelerating the decay. In summary, this is the devastating impact of a triple-dose Dutch disease. First, direct damage to the energy sector itself. Second, a creeping logistical paralysis that seizes up the nation's arteries. And third, a warped labor market pulling workers away from other critical industries. The problem is deeply structural, not cyclical. Temporary fixes like rationing and price controls are mere bandages on a wound that requires surgery. They cannot fix the underlying decay in refining capacity and logistics. Addressing such a crisis would require fundamental change. Standard economic toolkits suggest paths like establishing a sovereign wealth fund to stabilize revenue, launching aggressive diversification programs to build non-resource industries, and implementing market reforms to improve efficiency. But these are long-term, politically difficult solutions. Without the will for such fundamental change, the current path trends only downward, toward a deepening economic malaise and potential systemic collapse. The rot has set in, and all evidence suggests it is spreading.